Stress, anxiety, exhaustion, uncertainty, doubt. These are all emotions that come to the surface when you're selling your business. Hi, everybody. My name's Keith D, president of Osage Advisors. Welcome back to our podcast, The Ins and Outs of Selling a Business, and this week's big hurdle. These emotions I just spoke about, again, stress, anxiety, exhaustion, doubt, uncertainty, and there's many more. In the trade, we call that deal fatigue. No matter how well you plan, how execute on selling your company, there will come a time, or many times during that process, where doubt will come up because unresolved issues with the buyer. Stress will pop its head up because, you're trying to run a company and you're trying to sell a business. So you have a lot on your plate. And sometimes they get commingled in a way that, kind of separating the two is very difficult, which creates anxiety, which could also reverberate in through the company because it affects your emotional state. On a professional level, running a company, but also on a personal level. Because no matter how well you're doing through a sales process, if it's just not you, you have a partner, a family member, a son or daughter, a sister, a brother, a mother, father. All of a sudden, their anxiety, their stress, which may not be something that you experience, now becomes part of your makeup when you're trying to sell. So how do you deal with this deal fatigue that happens? And a key aspect of this is open, transparent communications among your trusted advisors, especially your banker, investment banker like Osage, or your broker, right? That is one of the main aspects of our job, is to help you steer through this doubt, uncertainty, this stress, and provide you with a level of comfort so you feel that you are back on track and you're committed and understand why these things happen. I look at it kind of like the boomerang effect with some of these issues that come up. We have a deal right now we're working on where this one issue just won't go away, right? And, our lawyers said one thing, their lawyers said another thing. It's going back and forth and back and forth. And we finally stepped in and said, look, we need to take this issue out of the lawyer's hands. It needs to be among the business people. And that's an area where we add a lot of value. It says if the lawyers can't come to, lawyers trying to protect their client on both sides. And they've done many, many, many deals in many, many industries. And they're trying to, wedge in this language into the purchase agreement that, we object to or are not comfortable with. So at some point you have to step in and take it out of their hands, because otherwise it's never going to get resolved. And it's actually, frankly, going to cost you a lot of money, right? Because lawyers bill by the hour. So in this situation, we stepped in and said, and with our attorney's blessing, I said, look, you guys, see if you can talk to the buyer directly and see if we can get this on the table. So we created what we call an issues list, because there's never just one issue, right? There's usually, you can get 99%, maybe 99% of the document down and everybody's in agreement, because a lot of it is, straightforward, or we have a good working relationship with our client. We've talked about the issues. We talked about the ramifications, what their exposure is, the risk mitigation, you name it. We've talked about all these things, and we've got to a point with our lawyers, and usually can't overemphasize the need for a good, experienced corporate M&A lawyer on your team. That is like a must. After your investment banker, after your accountant, that lawyer with that experience is incredibly important to the process. So, here we are. So we raised our hands. We came up with our issues. We had in this case, we had 6 issues. So we get on the phone with, and, and a couple of them could be deal breakers. Some of them, it's kind of like nice to have versus got to have. And so we had the issues list. So we set up a separate call. It was our client, of course, right? And us. And then on the other side, we had the buyer. In this case, there was a couple people, the CEO of the business and one other person. And we said, okay, here's our position on this. And they explained why they wanted this. And we said, look, look, okay, I'm not going to die in this hill, which means that they will acquiesce. Okay. And we explained to them why we need this, because there's certain things we don't know about their business. So in order for us to agree to it without knowing certain things, speculate that this is right, we couldn't do it. Right. It's not fair. So we had the call and we came to agreement on, 90% of where we were. And the other item, let the lawyers try to figure out in the language. So, they instructed lawyers to make these changes. We told a lawyer, this is where we're at. This is the areas we talked about. We feel good about A, B, C, and D. And, we gave on E, right? I mean, you're not going to get 100%. And the stuff that you give on, again, are nice to have, but aren't must-haves. So what we ended up doing is, so then the lawyers got together and they kind of modified the language and they came back and there was still a couple things sitting there that have not been agreed to, which completely frustrated our client, right? Because am I doing this with the right people? I mean, are they trying to get me? I mean, all these things come up. And some of these issues are so far down in the weeds from a legal perspective that it's kind of, you don't think about it day to day. That's not, you think about law, you're doing this. You don't think about, attaching point A to point B to point C to point D, right? And it's so far down that the likelihood of something happening is minute. You know your business better than anybody. So I asked our client, I said, how many times have you been sued related to this in 35, 40 years of business? And he said, never. I said, okay, is there anything out there right now from your perspective that relates to what they're getting here? He said, absolutely not. So I said, your decision, but what if we tweaked it X, Y, and Z, went back to them? I said, look, we're fine with this with these changes, right? Modest change. We're not trying to rewrite the whole section of the agreement, just modest changes. Because after having that conversation, all of a sudden he sat back and said, this is an area where I'm okay with. So when it comes down, and so we settled it, right? And we're moving forward. Those are the kind of things. So, that those things that come up that frustrate the heck out of you during a deal or create this whole stress level, anxiety level, it's really about knowledge. It's about knowing yourself, knowing your business, knowing your people, trusting your advisors. And if you lean on them, like us, like Osage, heavily during this phase, you're going to get to the finish line, which we are here. We're scheduled to close in the near future. So again, lean on your advisors, communicate, be as open and as transparent as possible, because we're here to protect you, defend you, and make sure the deal goes as you want it to go. So when you sign those papers, you feel good about it. Again, my name is Keith Deep, president of Osage Advisors. Thank you for being with us today. If you enjoyed this week's Big Hurdle, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at kdee@osageadvisors.com. To learn more about Osage Advisors, you can visit our website at osageadvisors.com, or feel free to pick up the phone and give me a call at 860-767-3273, extension 1001. Thanks again for being with us, and have a great day.